Is Russia mediator between Bharat and China? Pranay Paul says, what's going on with China? Is there really some kind of temporary understanding for mutual benefits? I think it's too, it's too early to say what's going on between Bharat and China. Whether you look at Pranay's question or geopolitical Dubey's question, is Russia mediating between India and China, Bharat and China? Look, right now the deal is this: China has been essentially encircled by the Americans uh, geographically. Let's go to the map and we'll see what I mean by that. So, where's the map? Here is map. Yes. So we have China here. Uh, East of China, you have Japan, South Korea. Then you have the island chains all the way to Guam. You know this island of Guam here, all controlled by the U.S. Philippines is controlled by the U.S. Whether you realize or not, these countries are essentially controlled by the U.S. Japan and South Korea are under immense US military occupation, permanent occupation. When it comes to Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Southeast Asia, all of these are essentially to some degree or the other controlled by the US. The Chinese have made a big enemy of India because of their actions over the past 70 years. So China doesn't have a friend there. Pakistan is once again a US vassal. When it comes to Afghanistan, you could say it's kind of on the US side. And then you have the ex-Soviet republics, which are more under the Russian sphere of influence than the Chinese sphere of influence. And then you have Mongolia, which is a buffer state between Russia and China, and that's what you have. So China is to a large extent encircled. There's a trade war going on between the US and China, and the Americans can deal with China and deal with the Chinese economically as well. And militarily, China is no match for the US. Okay, whether you realize it or not. So China is under strife. Bangladesh, they were trying to woo Bangladesh. Bangladesh is gone. It's now a newly minted US vassal state. And then you have Burma, which is torn in a tremendous civil war right now, which is kind of a proxy war between the United States and its puppet forces and the various other factions, which essentially are the erstwhile or whatever exists or remains of the Burmese government, which historically has been pro-China. So that's the deal. So China cannot, and China is really feeling the heat right now. And so is India. So is India. We have two newly minted vassal states on both sides, on East and West, Pakistan and East Pakistan. Okay, both are vassal states of the US. The Americans are trying to carve out an independent artificial Christian nation from the far east of India and parts of Burma, which is Kuki land. And they have unleashed proxy terrorism in Manipur and in the northeast, the far east of India. So India is facing a tremendous amount of heat from the Americans. China is facing a tremendous amount of heat from the Americans. The Americans are engaging in subnational diplomacy to destabilize India and so much more. Industrial scale Christian conversions in various parts of India, all kinds of destabilizing activities. The Americans are making it very clear to India that we are not your friends. They're making it very clear to India. The Chinese have known this for a very long time. The Russians are essentially engaged in a proxy war against NATO, which they had no choice but to start. Uh, so India, Russia, China uh, are on the receiving end of the US empire's actions. So does it make sense for India and China to come together? I mean, if India and China have to come together, the onus is on China to prove that they are trustworthy. Because all the bad blood that exists between India and China is entirely because of China. India has not been the aggressor or the provocator in any of these cases. China claims Indian territory. India doesn't claim Chinese territory. China in the 20th century used to support uh, anti-India uh, insurgents and separatists in various parts of India, and so much more. There's a whole lot of actions the Chinese have done. So if things are to be normalized, the onus is on China. Let me repeat this: if the Chinese want things to get better between India and China, because it makes sense, then the onus is on you, my friends. You've got to prove to India that you can be trusted. And we're going to take it one small step at a time. And let's see. Maybe we can do a pilot project somewhere in the neighborhood. Yes, our Chinese friends. Maybe we can do a pilot project somewhere in our mutual neighborhood and see if we can work together to a certain extent and to see whether we are reliable partners in a small project. Not a very small project, but not a very large project either. Somewhere in our mutual neighborhood. That's what in Bharat and China should do. Is Russia mediating? We don't know. I mean, if they are mediating, they will. It's not going to be publicized. Whatever real diplomacy happens, always happens behind closed doors. But let me tell you this: it makes eminent sense for RIC to happen. Russia, India, China, and the only obstacle when it comes to RIC is China's behavior. So the onus is on China. But it makes sense for the three nations to kind of come together. China shouldn't feel threatened by India. India has never been a threat to China. China has been a threat to all its neighbors. China needs to mend its ways. China needs to take several steps, many extra miles, walk many extra miles to demonstrate to nations like India that we can take it seriously and kind of trust it. Because in the past, they have been tremendously duplicitous.